One wish, Willow. You only get one wish. I wish Nikki Freeman loved me more than anyone in the entire world.
I love you so much.
Do you still think I'm pretty?
Welcome to Chainsaws and Tits. My name is Pat Cannon. To my left, my co-host is Gibby Kane.
Oh my God, it's been so long. I'm Gibby Kane. You are listening to Chainsaws and Tits, and we are reviewing the movie Obsession, released May 15th, 2026. That's exciting for us because we normally don't do new movies.
That's right. We haven't done anything in 4 years, I think was the last episode. It's been quite a while. We're still married. We still watch a lot of movies, but we just don't talk about it anymore for a multitude of reasons. But we were just talking a lot about the movie, and I was like, you know what? Let's fire it back up. Let's do one, because I think we have a lot of really interesting observations, and you did a lot of research and have been doing. I think you watched the movie entirely on TikTok almost beforehand, right?
Yeah, that is correct, Pat. I watched this entire. So I'm a tattoo artist now. I guess it's been a while. So I talk to clients every day, and some horror people are asking, "So, have you seen Obsession?" I say, "Yeah," entirely through Reels. And you know what? It actually worked out in my favor because I knew all the scenes I liked, and I knew I wanted to watch it. But having watched it to its entirety has been nice to understand pacing, and it's good. It's really good. I do know a little something about how advertising goes with movies recently, but I'll get into that in a second. We'll do the opening. Don't worry, we're doing it. It's happening. We're doing it. Released May 15, 2026, directed by Curry Barker, who is an ingenue. He took the opportunity after his YouTube short, The Chair, was adapted into a feature. The film shot in LA, so that was done in October 2024. So that was a minute ago, which I think is interesting because Indy Navarrete, who talks about her streaming, and I think she ended up spending a lot of time leaning into the streaming to turn profit for that year because it took a while for Obsession to come out. But she's incredibly talented, and she really killed that, and we'll get into that. But the budget was $750,000. It ended up making $256.7 million domestic. World earnings were a lot higher than that, so very successful. Highest grossing film in cinema history, made on a budget under $1 million. So big ups to Curry Barker for absolutely killing it. It's officially the highest grossing movie in 24-year history of Focus Features. It beat out 2019's Downton Abbey.
So question, why are we doing this? Why did we decide to come back? I think we said we were just talking probably for hours about it. We've already seen it once before. We're going to do kind of the show a little differently this time. We're going to be rewatching the movie while we record the episode, taking breaks to kind of like make observations. But I just think there's some interesting dynamics going on. There's a lot of dialogue about choice and consent and what that means. And I don't know. I think it's worth talking about. I have a lot of opinions about my perception being like an elder millennial and kind of what dating looks like now for kids and the similarities, but then there's like a vast like amount of difference, I guess, between the generations I also noticed. So I'll just be pointing those out. From my perspective is more like, yeah, old man, 38. So, nowhere near the age of this cast except Andy Richter. He is like the only one I was like, oh shit, I recognize him. But yeah, I'm going to be, discussing like disgusting. I'm going to be as disgusting as Bear. No, nobody's as disgusting as Bear. He's like he's a mix of like, not hero, protagonist, I guess, but he's also the main antagonist, which is there, I don't know if there's a name for that, but he's both.
Well, he's complicated. It's complicated. I think what's also interesting, you're talking about being the old man in the room, which is also true, but Curry Barker is 26. That's a pretty young level of success for a relatively young guy. And I think that's interesting when you look at what this is covering and the attitudes in dating now, which obviously we're pretty far from that world. When's the last time you dated?
You.
And I want to thank everybody anyways for showing up. It's been 4 years. It's been a long time, and I might be a little rusty, but I still remember some of it. So let's get into it. We start with the plot. Bear has feelings for Nikki. He just lost his cat. I know. He starts off as such a, redeemable character in some aspects. He's shy. He wants to maybe tell a girl that he likes her. I mean, that's a tale as old as time, right? We've seen that time and time again. Plenty of films, plenty of storylines. The problem here is that Bear's he's kind of a coward. You want to say something about his incredible character?
He lacks character. That's his incredible character. It's like you get that intro in the beginning with him talking to the waitress, and it's just like, oh wow, so he's really able to lay his feelings all out, but you realize he can only do that when he has nothing. He's not risking anything. He's terrified of risk, which is kind of important when you're dating, is to be vulnerable and not be afraid of looking like an idiot, because it could lead to disastrous consequences, which you find out. And the escalation of that alone is pretty remarkable. So, yeah, I think he's pretty despicable and unlikable as a main character. But I think there's some relatability, oh God, I hope I never come off that way. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no. As a woman, I definitely know what you mean, because I think most women at some point, I mean, I'm sure some men too, you get hit on by somebody who's just beating around the bush and being super awkward, but you kind of know what's going on. And I think that's clear in Nikki and her responses to him, which we talked about a little bit after we had watched the movie. Do you think she would have said yes to him in the car scene if he had just been clear about his feelings to her and upfront? Or do you think she would have turned him down? Because obviously, he's like, I want to give you something. And she's like, ew. Because she very obviously doesn't view him in a romantic way, but maybe she would have been at least open to a date.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why you said there was kind of a dialogue online about what was going to happen in the car. And I think it's done, edited, directed, and acted incredibly well, that it's open-ended. I think there's an excuse. You could see it one way or another. Bear, like you said, incredibly sympathetic, clearly he's living in you find out it's his grandmother's old house, and the cat ODs on the pills, and it's just really sad. So you're just kind of, and you see he can be vulnerable, maybe working up the courage. You don't know exactly how this is gonna go. We know because we see kind of the horrors this movie is willing to go through in the very opening scene before you see that. I also like the cool obsession logo on the blanket. I thought that was a really interesting way. But he's crying on the bed, and you're just like, oh, this poor guy. He's clearly in that middle stage between high school and about to go to college, and that's when you start kind of defining yourself as an adult and all that stuff. So he's got a lot of sympathy. He's earned that right to just be come on, you want him to, he's not, but you're just oh, come on, just work up the courage.
I think what's interesting too is you and I can speak on this because we're, in our mid to late 30s at this point. We're talking about people who are being represented at that age, and that's a really complicated time in life when you're trying to set some tone and boundaries. You can't really, I feel like a lot of times it's a rare person to be able to do that. And his friend is kind of the opposite side of that. His friend Ian's kind of an asshole, right? He is super self-assured, And he's like, nah, man, you just gotta like nag her and all that. Like, you just gotta be mean to her and she'll like it. But he is kind of right, because as we find out, Ian's been sleeping with Nikki off and on for a while now.
Yeah, you don't find that out until way later, though. So I'm wondering if had Bear known that, maybe he would have been like, oh, well, clearly this is going to complicate my relationship with my friends. It's already kind of, we all work together. So it's kind of, no, I definitely think it's important that we don't find that out right away. And it's also interesting that Ian's kind of like encouraging it somehow. Like he's coaching him, even though he's sleeping with the girl.
Well, that's because he doesn't care about her. None of these men care about this woman. They don't care about her at all. And in some ways, I suspect Nikki doesn't really care about Nikki either, at least a little bit. Because I think that they're in that in-between stage in life, and they're only focused on themselves, which is typical when you're in your early 20s. And that's okay, too, because you do have a lot of development you got to go through. So, yeah, you should focus on yourself. But unfortunately, I think, me personally, they view Nikki as an object to obtain rather than a person with her own free will and desires. And I think that sets the tone for the entire movie. At least that's how I read it, right? And we have a huge setup here. It's agonizing. It goes on forever. Bear is so weak and so sad and so tragic, and he loses his cat, which is sad. Pat looked at me and he was like, no, we're not doing this. He's like, did you know about this? And I was like, yeah, it gets worse. I'm so sorry. Big trigger warning with the cat.
Yeah, there was kind of throughout the whole movie, because you had watched it on TikTok, that I was like, I would look over to you when I was laughing quite a bit, honestly, throughout this movie. I was like, this is fucked up. But I would look over at you and you'd just be like, it's going to get worse. Like, don't worry. This is, and I was like, oh, I can imagine it's going to get worse throughout the movie. Like when Sarah is talking to Bear in the car, kind of the beginning of the third act. And I was like, they're shooting that window so specifically. You're going to see fucking Nikki roll up, smash through that window, and do something really fucked up. But then she smashes her face so much so. You're getting ahead of yourself. No, it's almost like the Greasy Strangler, like level of like comic violence and just grotesqueness. You're just like, damn, this is unflinching.
Speaking of windows, I want to acknowledge right at the point where he breaks the One Wish Willow, there's this dark shadowy figure that crosses behind him through the window we see, and I did see that. It was such a small screen. Obviously, that's not something that you notice when you're watching the Reels version of this movie, excuse me. But there's like comments below where people are like, I'm disappointed that they didn't do more with that. And I don't know what the intention of it was. I can't quite tell if it was you're looking at me like, yeah, duh.
Nothing in this movie is accidental. I think Curry Barker's even seeding like, hey, I want to do a Star Wars movie, when he says, hey, you guys ready to go to Greedos? Like, they say Greedos over and over again. It's like, yeah, I'd be down to direct a Star Wars movie. Clearly I'm into them. So anything that's on screen is intentional. This is a low budget horror movie. It's well made, but it's low budget.
Before we really get into the weeds here beat by beat, I do want to point out that when it comes to low budgets and advertising now, NPR just reported on this a little while ago and did a deep dive. So when you see things on Reels and Instagram and TikTok, this is a lot of the times they're finding out that this is just guerrilla advertising for films and shows. And you see a clip going viral, it's not always necessarily organic. A lot of the times they're being uploaded by production companies and paid and bought by random accounts who are uploading it simultaneously. So it's sort of tricking the algorithm into believing that this is a viral sensation, right? So it is successful, obviously. I mean, we keep making the joke, but I'm not kidding. I really did watch this entire movie in clips. But it didn't ruin the experience for me. Maybe somebody else it would have.
And I think that's what turned this movie weirdly into like a Minecraft experience in the theater. There's a reason I don't like going to the theaters so much anymore, is because etiquette is completely dead. People are on their phones. People run around, act like fucking assholes. So people were going into theaters and like talking throughout it, like almost like they were in a living room, just because it was kind of like, oh, we're all in on this. We all like have watched this on our phones and we're just seeing it like in the theater as a thing to do. which is weird that a movie like this would get embraced that way. Like, it's not an IP or anything. It's literally just a low budget horror movie. So why it would be embraced in that way, I think I think you're dead on with how it was promoted and advertised, probably through production companies on social media, because it was just like, well, we need to get the word out. We need to get, and then it created kind of like this cultural phenomenon. But what that means in the context of like a theater experience is hell. And you don't want to fucking watch a movie that way where people are talking and on their phones and like laughing. I mean, you can laugh. I probably would have seen this in theaters and laughed quite a bit at all the same moments I laughed at in our living room.
Pat wants absolutely no reaction ever in the theater. He wants everybody to be very good and well behaved and sit in silence.
Yeah. Because like you gotta we're just watching a movie. This isn't like a, fucking a concert where you can like sing along and shit. It's annoying, right? Like if people are doing that. I don't think that's crazy to say, like, I want the movie theater to be quiet when I'm watching.
I personally think it depends on the movie, but I understand what you're saying. And it does take the energy out of the scene. If I had watched this movie in theaters and people were talking the whole time, I definitely would have gone insane. Also, if I could have heard like the next screen over a Marvel movie or Transformers going and then you're hearing explosions while there's like these quiet moments, these quiet scenes full of tension, I definitely would have not appreciated that. So I think, listen, we agree. You're right, old man.
Have you ever been in one of those movie theaters where you're ruining other movies around you? Like when you're like in the IMAX, or it's like the X screen. I don't think you've ever seen the X screen, but I was at the Green in Dayton, and they have one of those. It's almost like a super wide screen on both sides of the wall, typically where the speakers are. Super gimmicky. I mean, it's not as gimmicky as 3D, but you're just like, I was watching Master of the Universe and I'm like, oh, this is definitely ruining any movie around it because of how loud and obnoxious it is. People were probably watching Obsession like, there's fucking some old guy snoring, because I was seeing it on like a Sunday afternoon. You're like, that's acceptable. Guy falls asleep. Maybe he's just, relaxing. That's okay. Yeah. It could be obnoxious during the quiet parts, but at least it's not, quoting the lines of the movie along with it or something.
No, that would be so annoying. I think one of my favorite parts of being able to watch this from the comfort of my own home was being able to enjoy all of the pacing as it unfolded, which I think there's like these really great little details. Now that I kind of know all of the secrets, right, I can really appreciate the acting decisions, which I will talk about as we get further and further into like Nikki's descent into freaky Nikki. But I want to also acknowledge when that figure walks by, I feel like I see it turn its head towards him, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be like the one Wish Willow is like it's so convenient, right? You can explain anything away with the magic of it, like, oh, that's why, or oh, this opens up to the entity taking over Nikki, and that's why she starts acting goofy and like going around the car, and Bear's freaked out by it too, and she's freaked out by it because they're fighting for control over her body. I think that there's this moment when Bear makes the decision that he is going to choose the cowardly way out because it's easier for him. It's his natural inclination. And he just kind of gives up, and he's just like, why am I like this? And then he goes and he grabs the One Wish Willow and he cracks it open.
He doesn't make a single heroic or positive decision the entire movie. He makes only the easiest or passive decisions anybody could make in his position. So he weirdly becomes our victim. Normally you'd be like rooting for somebody in this kind of relationship, but because he's chosen to manipulate her wish to take away her free will, you have to like constantly be reminding yourself that he is a villain, that he is a bad person. And it helps that he does look like Charlie Kirk a little bit, right?
Yo, you said it, not me. I'm gonna let you explain that one in the comments later.
I mean, at first I was like, he kind of looks like Matt Dillon, maybe a Bruce Campbell, but in certain light I was like, oh, he kind of looks like Charlie Kirk.
Can you imagine if Erica Kirk is the freaky Nikki that takes over Nikki's body, just like completely insane and unhinged and maniacal? Anyways, back to this movie. I did just lose my cat bear. That's so funny to me. And I think what you're saying is also there's an added layer of interest here because the only thing that Bear really cares about is Bear. And I think there's this thing that takes over Nikki, this entity that tries to emulate whatever Bear cares about. And I think that it emulates Bear. It like mimics Bear. It like repeats what Bear says a couple times too, because it's trying to identify. I don't know. I might be making a lot of assumptions here. To me, I also get the feeling that that's what it's trying to like isolate as like an algorithm would, if that makes sense. And I think she doesn't know how to act, so the entity doesn't know how to act, so it's like trying to isolate those things in Bear and identify them.
Yeah, because it's clearly not omniscient. Like, it doesn't know what's in Bear's heart, right? All it knows is that it loves Bear more than anybody else in the world. So that's interesting because, I mean, at the very end, when we get there, we could talk about it, but clearly it doesn't know.
No, and I think part of that is also because Bear doesn't know too. So there's like this moment too, and not to get ahead of ourselves, when they have their like fake romance that unfolds, and it's sort of like clip scenes of like a bear paint commercial where they're like painting the walls together and they're just like making pancakes. They're like, we're so in love, and it's completely fake, just as fake as like that kind of whole thing seems. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else but me, but I get it.
Yeah, I think that was a good way to show kind of their romance, like put it in a montage, because none of it's real. It's all fake. So it's a very quickly just here's some snippets, and we know they've been together for a few weeks, I think, when the movie breaks from the montage, right? So at that point, it's like, okay, what's going on here? Clearly, she's not just on MDMA, like Ian assumes. Like, she was on fucking drugs, man. That's why she was acting like that. And then it's like implied, like, it's stated that she was in Mr. Lando's class, another Star Wars reference. She was like called Freaky Nikki when she was younger and stuff, and she's sensitive about that. So they're like, well, maybe she is just kind of weird. Maybe it's just, she's playing weird games, all that stuff.
Oh no, well, she's a writer, she's got that creative spark that makes you a little bit of an outsider, that makes you do, maybe some unique things in the eyes of some basics.
Oh, once we get to that party scene and we get her snippet of what she's writing, you're like, did she write this or did the entity write this? Because it's like that graphic retelling of Hansel and Gretel. You're just like, fucking everybody at the party is super grossed out about it. She's like, I don't drink, so I'm just going to share some of my writing or whatever her brick said to do.
Yeah, I think it's instantaneous with the One Wish Willow. It instantly kicks off this new fight for control over Nikki's body. The entity and Bear both fighting for control. Nikki has very little say, although I am glad that like he at least isn't such a piece of shit that they sleep separately the first night. But it's just at that point, though, I think you get this moment where Bear's like, it's weird. I don't know. He's both like disappointed, freaked out, but then also like open to it. He's a really strange character that's been written. And I think the actor does an incredible job as well portraying this wretched creature that is Bear. Michael Johnston is awesome at his portrayal of this character. I don't think anybody else could have handled it. And I also we haven't said this, but I really like the fact that everybody is an ingenue in this cast. I can't remember if I mentioned that Indy Navarrete, she was doing streaming and dog walking for a year and a half just to pay her rent in between acting gigs, because she did do some performances before this. She has a pretty extensive background, even as early as like she's pretty young, so like I don't want to say child actress, but definitely early performances. So good on her, man. I hope she gets her flowers. I hope everybody in this cast gets their flowers.
Yeah, she's definitely gonna be if anybody has a huge career, gonna be her. She's got so much range in this movie. She can play. She's willing to go to like some really despicable depths. Then Bear comes back and she's covered in shit and piss. Like, I can't imagine a ton of like Twitch streamer girls that would be down to like do that in their first big lead role, right?
No, and that's the thing is it seems to me like she has done some roles before this. So this just happened to be the one that really caught everybody by storm. And maybe it's because she was willing to go there. And I think that's a part of it. Yeah, she says, I ate a bug. I got a stomach bug.
Yeah, we talk about like the marketing on social media, probably from Blumhouse, like trying to advertise it. But really, the movie has to stand on its own. Like at the end of the day, you can't just survive on viral, like trying to have viral marketing be it has to have like the meat behind it. You know what I mean?
Well, when you say meat, you must mean Jason Blum. Because when this was released and premiered at Toronto International Film Festival, that's where Focus Features acquired the distribution rights for 14-15 milli, the highest price commanded by a genre film in history. And Jason Blum came on board as executive producer and made allegedly 17 million.
You mean after like all the box office and everything? Holy shit. That's crazy. So the movie was made for less than $1 million, and then the distribution was that's fucking nuts. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. I know, like, you'd think like, well, it was, acquired. Like, well, we'll take a chance. He's a new up and coming filmmaker. But I think we're entering an interesting space with YouTube creators. That's just the platform for making interesting stuff. You're gonna see their stuff on Instagram or YouTube first. But that doesn't mean they're a YouTuber. I think that's just going to make them, that's just the easiest way to show your chops, right? You have a platform finally. Maybe like it would be interesting to see like continued experiments in filmmaking from these directors. Like if they just dabble in both, like they do YouTube and movies.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, and I wonder what this is going to do and set the tone for the industry going forward, because we already know that Curry Barker's talked about AI and the use of AI in filmmaking and entertainment in general. I mean, the world is very, very different than it has been ever before, at least certainly since the last time we recorded a podcast. It's like we're in a whole new can of worms, my friends. And I wonder too about some of the talent that was involved as well, because it's all well and good. We see the faces of the performers, which carry the movie along and give it what it is, the spark. But we're talking about also people who are behind the scenes, the money behind the scenes, and people like the art director who was recently talking endlessly about how she was paid. Sally Choi went viral, revealing that she had been paid $300 per day, which basically was around a little under $7,000. And I don't know if she was on for the entirety. I would imagine that's not the case. She probably was working for maybe half of the amount of time it took for it to come out. But
I think like I've done animation stuff, and I know like pre-production, you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But I think if you're on set, like if you're just on set for the shooting days, which I don't know what the shooting, like the duration of the shoot was, but I would imagine the art director would want to be on board like the whole time of the production. So maybe there was like a little bit of conversation with the director about like, well, here's kind of what I'm wanting to do and all that. But I would imagine they'd want to be on set for the entirety so they could like change, move things around. They're doing a lot of like, art directors typically do like fixing with like the set and maybe some costume stuff. They're overseeing kind of all of it. Typically, it makes sense that they would only have like a day rate because it's like, we're shooting today, so we need you today.
I mean, if that's her day rate, and this is true, is $300 a day, that's a little over 23 days. So basically, that would be a month's worth of work, which is what I saw circulating. So a lot of this is like allegedly. This is partly also what she was posting about, and I think it's understandable when you see something make this much money. I mean, that's a lot of money that you don't get a piece in, but that's showbiz, baby. As somebody who worked formerly in post-production, that's just kind of unfortunately how it works, unless you're the front of the business and you're one of these performers. And I do feel like there's a lot of talent here. A lot of people showed up, small budget in the first place, so not a lot of people were getting paid what they definitely were worth. So, in part, I do agree. And you wanted to talk about the sound editing, the music side of it too, because there's some talent.
Yeah, I think it was, Curry Barker was pretty involved. He did the editing as well, and he oversaw the music. But Rock Burwell, I believe is the man's name, he does a phenomenal job. Great, like, synth, horror, atmospheric. There's some themes, like there's the One Wish Willow theme and stuff that are specific, but it's just very well done. There's just great music. I just wanted to just shout it out. It's not like specific, like, we're not talking about Mike Oldfield here, where it's like Tubular Bells. It's going to be very memorable, but I just think it's great.
Well, you make that joke about Mike Oldfield. First of all, that is an expose in human tenacity. So you should put some respect on my man's name. I'm looking at the album right now. But the idea, though, it's funny you make that point, because some of the ideas with the entity possessing Nikki and like her as she pisses on the floor, and I was just making jokes about The Exorcist, and it's very similar. We see Reagan do the same thing when the party's going on downstairs and she tells Bert he's gonna die up there. That's a great scene, and I think it's a nice harken to something very classic. But it's still unique to its own. I will absolutely put a stamp on that, which I would be honest if I felt something was ripping something off. I would tell you.
I want to have kind of a more discussion about this. Is it a demon, or is just the magic forces themselves manipulating nature and the law of nature?
So that's a good question. I think that the occult store that is the one selling it, everybody there is very indifferent, and a lot of people are complaining about how this wish it happened to come true, so everybody's complaining about it and coming back into the store, and the lady who's selling it in the first place just could not give a fuck.
Yeah, it's just like any main street, like, witchy store. It's not like the creepy place where, the Mogwai are, like some like cobwebs everywhere and like crates. It's literally your mom's witch store, which it's like, and the display the One Wish Willow are in, it's like, I called it like a Cracker Barrel kind of like gag gift. It looks kind of like chintzy, but clearly there's real magic involved. So my question is like, well, I think it's just the manipulation of nature. I don't think it's a demon per se. I think it's because the laws of nature are being manipulated around her. There's kind of like a storm or something is happening inside of her, is what I think.
I personally, because I guess maybe I just really love The Exorcist, maybe that's my problem here, is I like the idea of it being a possession. I think I saw a rumor. I did not take the time to establish if this is true or not, but Curry Barker talks about it not being a demon possession, or at least he said it's not the cat possessing her. A lot of people were really obsessed with that fan theory, which is funny, but no, that's not it. I do think, though, that there is proof that it's an entity, because oftentimes Nikki doesn't remember things. And in the date scene, he's talking about a moment when they were in high school together and she doesn't remember. And she doesn't remember when apparently she told Bear that he's a closed book. So there's honestly a lot of proof there to me. And of course, her just like standing there shitting herself for like 8 hours, I think also proves that like she's not in the driver's seat. Something else is. And it's fighting to control her mind, body, and soul. And it wants to replicate Bear's image of what like it believes is what Bear wants. So that's even more strange to me, because he's talking about his cat, he's talking about himself on that date. She's just asking him questions about him and he doesn't reciprocate, which drove me completely insane, by the way. I can't stand that. But that's just because I'm a stickler for like polite conversation. Like, you got to talk to the person in front of you. You can't just talk by yourself the whole time. That's so rude.
There's no religious themes in the movie, so that's another strike against in my opinion, the religious aspect of it. The Freaky Nikki is like post-wish, but there's a person in there, Nikki, and she's being manipulated by this magic, and that's kind of where I see it. I guess it's that observation about the cat. We did notice cats are a theme throughout the movie. Sandy, obviously the poor little dead cat that gets in the meds. The clock, we had one of those clocks. The cool little, I don't know what they're called, with the eyes and the tail that move back and forth. That's in the movie. And then the logo on the back of the One Wish Willow. Can't remember the name of the company, but it's a little black cat. And you haven't talked about this yet, but the way she says bear and the way she moves is very cat-like. So I could see, I didn't think the cat, like the energy of the cat was inside of her, even though they've eaten cat. I just think cats are a theme.
Well, she's emulating what Bear likes, and she knows that he liked his cat. And I think that's why that keeps coming up. But as far as the cat theme, I think it's also interesting because she gives him her tiger's eye that she got from her mom. We don't know Nikki's mom's story. We don't know if she was close to her mom. We don't know anything about that. We know that she wasn't close to her dad.
We know that's significant because obviously if she was in control of herself, nobody would give something to a boyfriend that they inherited from their mother, especially, 2 weeks in. I guess, I don't know if it's mentioned how long they're dating up to that point, but, it would be weird. And he's just like, remember he says right before he starts fucking her, he's like, I'm okay with it. Or what does he say? Like before it just hard cuts to her, like,
yeah,
just completely like dead face. She's not even like, the thing is, because the wish wasn't specifically about like, I want him to fuck me. She's completely like, well, this is what he wants, whatever he wants, kind of, but she's just dead-eyed while he's getting what he wants. He's good with it.
She gives her confidence. She literally gives her confidence to him. She says like, oh, this tiger's eye was given to me by my mother, and it's supposed to help you with your confidence. So now you can be a food critic for some reason, because suddenly that's something that you're interested in, even though you're actually not. But I do like the idea though of this being like an important part of her character. She likes crystals. She's into the occult. Now, here's the thing, though. In my opinion, when it comes to Nikki, she doesn't have a lot of things that she strongly, adamantly believes in that we know of. It's not clear in her character. She's pretty underdeveloped as a character when we meet her. And I think that that's intentional because she doesn't have, stand for nothing, fall for anything, right? So I think, I'm not saying that that's like why the wish worked on her, but I'm saying that, she doesn't have this strong character in the eye of Bear, who is just happy to fill this void both literally and figuratively with the things that he likes.
Yeah, you're kind of left with a lot of just doubt about what, she's really going through, but you get like glimpses, like when she breaks throughout the movie, like at first I don't know if we mentioned this, but she's like, whoa, this is kind of weird. What's happening to me? And then like at the party, she like stabs herself in the face. So the escalation of like Nikki saying, what the fuck? I don't want to fucking be in this stinky guy's house wearing his stinky sweater. This sweater smells like you. And it's like, that's part of the obsession. Clearly she's, I don't want to say she's repelled. He's on the fence with her. Like the entirety, she's Nikki. You know what I mean? She's like, well, she's friend zoned him. She's got to work with him, but she's putting in the 2 weeks. So clearly it's like, she's okay kind of moving through life. This is like, I'm moving through this transitional phase in life and I'm ready to kind of like write and become my own person, which unfortunately we never get to see.
2 weeks into this relationship, though, we know it's only 2 weeks because she's still working there. She has her day off, and her day off happens right before, after she is put in her 2 weeks notice, but before her last day, right? So we know that to be true. So it's a short relationship. It's very quick. I mean, you remember being in your early 20s and having like kind of a fling early relationship. Maybe you don't, I don't know, but I can remember being in that like super intense stage, and then it's just like, we're gonna be together forever, and and then it cools up, and then girls, he loses interest in you because he meets somebody else, and I don't know. I do like the setup with the date though. It's kind of a funny scene. I love how he's like, I'm going to be a food critic, maybe. And it's like, he's got this gross plate of bread in front of him and he like licks it. And it's like, no, Bear's just gross. He's a gross person. He's a gross like person in every sense, including with how greasy he obviously is at every single scene. He gets greasier and greasier. And then he's like got the gall to be mad at her for cutting his hair. It's like, dude, it's okay that Nikki wanted to be the Midnight Barber. You look like shit. What's wrong with that? You need the help, brother. Brother, you need the help. Like if you're wearing shirts like that, somebody commented, I'm stealing this like joke from some random comment I saw on Instagram, and it was like a guy wearing sweaters like that smells really bad.
Well, do we see what she does with the hair? Does she eat it? Well, like, right? What does she do with the hair? Do fucking knowing how nasty she is, she probably fucking ate that hair.
Absolutely ate that hair. I mean, okay, so not to get ahead of ourselves here because we're about to get into like kind of the more cat talk. So children, cover your ears because it gets quite gross. But like maybe that's what gave her the stomach bug, is eating his gross, greasy hair. Has anybody thought about that? There you go. That's a new fan theory for you. How you like that, Instagram? No, it's absolutely appalling. And then you don't feel bad for him. The guy's an asshole. And then he's like, turns around and looks at the duct tape covered door. It's so funny because, to be fair, he did tell her to stop being weird after the door was already duct taped shut. So there's that in her defense. No, but that scene is immaculate, by the way. That scene with her in the corner and like, you're so cute when you sleep. Like she is awesome. And I love the makeup direction for it too. Did you see any of the behind the scenes stuff with the makeup and the way that they did it to make her face like very distorted?
Like she's got a lot of heavy contouring or something like that. Is that kind of the direction they took it?
Yeah, they put like little marks of eyeliner like underneath her eyes where her pupils would line up, and they hollowed out her cheeks. So okay.
I did see that photo.
Yes, it's very, very cool. Yeah, it's a very cool effect that they were able to achieve, and her standing in shadow also adds to it. I think it's awesome. I love it. I love the stop motion. It makes me think of the Japanese horror film House, the movie House. It makes me think of the scene, and there's this amazing breakdown we've watched, many years ago about House, where filming that they hired a ballet dancer to perform the ghost's movements, and then they sort of shot it in slow motion and then backwards and then played it back in and edited it in such a way that it was just, the movements were incredibly supernatural, unnatural, but also articulated very carefully, choreographed. And I like that because the concept is then that the entity, you are not viewing the entity is viewing you. And I think that plays very nicely into the decisions that were made in filming a lot of the scenes in this film with freaky Nikki acting all strange. And it freaks out Bear, which is always a delight for all of us because he deserves it. And just what he does to her in like that scene, and he's like, yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that, whatever, and sleeps with her anyways. And it's just so, like, I think that's when it turns for me. That's when he's a villain. He's an absolute villain. She's laying there and just, like, dead in the eyes. It's so sad. And I personally think that that's what sets up the entity to really be battling for control, because I think that's when Nikki is conscious of some of what's happening to her enough to know. And I think that's what sets it really off. So we get to the party, and it's insane. It's a completely insane scene. I love everything about it because we all remember going to the kickbacks in like early college years. You play like the stupid drinking game, and they've got the drinking game going. Nikki doesn't drink, I guess, suddenly now. And so her choice when it comes to her turn, she's going to read an insane story about Hansel and Gretel that she's been working on, about her, the sister fucking the brother, or vice versa, which I think is pretty on the nose, don't you?
Yeah, the meaty forearm into the shape of the willow. Like, I know what happened to me. I'm still very much aware. And yeah, it's so fucked up. It's really funny. It's a really funny scene because everybody's partying. All the background extras are just like having their own conversations. Kiss the person to your left. Sarah's to his left. Camera pan. Great little sound cue when we pan over to her, and you're like, oh, Nikki's gonna fuck her up like really bad. Not this scene, but you think it's gonna happen in that scene. And then she, says that thing about nobody's gonna know what it's like. No, everybody's gonna die not knowing what it's like to be this much in love, which is true, I think, because nobody's gonna have a fucking magic spell cast over them that takes control of their willpower. And then yeah, she has that, I think, the best breakout of the true Nikki coming out, and then she stabs herself with the broken bottle, and then they're like, what the fuck, party's over, go to the hospital, where I was confused when we first watched it, but we just rewatched it again. She clearly refuses care, and it's kind of like, well, she doesn't want to go inside, which also interesting. I'm wondering if they couldn't get access to a hospital, maybe, and they were just like, can we shoot the exterior with like a lady dressed as a nurse? You get good hospital production value out of just shooting the exterior, and you don't need to waste your time. Again, Curry Barker edited this movie. I think it's incredibly well paced. I think it sits around 2 hours or just a little bit under 2 hours. So any of that stuff, we were talking about the romance, the building up of their romance, we just see in a montage. Any extra scenes that help kind of the story are there, but there's no like lingering wasted dialogue. It just kind of jumps between the party to the car ride home, her freaking out, and then you made some really interesting observations after they get home from the hospital, right?
Yeah, I think there is this incredible score going behind it as the scene unfolds, and he's asking her like, please, like, I'm asking you to be normal. But then he's like, and then she starts freaking out and getting whiny, and she starts pouting and throwing a tantrum, and he pleads with her then in return. So there's a great tit for tat with this beautiful melancholy synthesizer playing behind him. Love that. And I think that's when the entity and Nikki fight again, and you get that awesome slow-mo back pacing. She stands up suddenly, backs away after lulling him into like a moment of calm. I love how he's, like, this isn't real, is it? It's just not been real this whole time. And it's like, yeah, no shit, Bear. I think you knew that. And then she's like, oh no, I'll love you more than anything ever. And he's like, okay, I'll take that again. That works for me. And then she stands up, and I saw when this clip specifically, I've watched this clip like 1,000 million times. Can't even tell you, because I love it, because I love the editing. It's so scary. It's good. It's good. And there's great audio engineering going on as she steps backwards and she says, rail me. And then she says, ruined us. But it's affected and it's manipulated and it's made very cool and creepy and strange and violent somehow. And I love that, because it took me a while to figure out what she was saying there, because the mix on it is so odd. And the comments below, everybody was like, she's saying rail me and ruin me and blah, blah. And I was like, well, I don't hear that. But this, I finally heard it this time. Ruined us. I think that's interesting, because it's not just ruined us. I mean, you could take that a few different ways. Nikki's talking about her and Freaky Nikki together, ruined us. She's talking about basically being assaulted, right? He's assaulted her multiple times, at least one time on camera we've seen. So is she saying ruined us as in me and this group, you and me, Bear? I don't know. I think it's open-ended enough to keep it very interesting for viewers like me, who like to kind of get into sort of the psychology of it all.
Yeah, I think it's ruined us, meaning like we see their dynamic in the first bar, like how casual, good group of friends they are. I think then we see her vibe. She doesn't pass the vibe check the entire time at that party. She's freaking out, laughing awkwardly, telling fucked up stories. No, she is ruined completely. Everybody thinks she's clearly like, I don't want to be perceived as freaky. And then she's clearly freaky now.
You ever go to a party in college and just like, there's like that one girl who's just like kind of insane, and everybody knows she's insane. Everybody's been talking about it on campus. She's completely nuts. And she does something and you're like, yep, there it is. We told you. And it just ruins the vibe completely.
Yeah, I went to art school. So yeah, that was most parties. There was somebody who was just not on.
This, and when he is trying to duck out, because rather predictably, I think, he starts talking to Sarah on his phone while Nikki has got him in a death grip. And he is going to duck out in the middle of the night and throw caution to the wind, talk to somebody else, because now he's got what he's wanted. He's bored now and freaked out and turned off, so he's going to just go move on. and she's talking to him because the entity is asleep. So we hear the real Nikki, and she's pleading for him to kill her in a whispered tone to not wake up the entity and to kill her. And he's like, well, what's so bad about being with me anyways? And she's like, I was never with you, dumbass. And then he just puts on the same frown that she delivers at the party, which I think is such a funny detail. I don't know if that was intentional or not. But and then he fucks off anyways, and she's like, please.
At this point in the movie, everybody's frowning. There's no smiling anymore. The smiling of the plot is done. We are frowning from here on out. So he relents, goes to meet up with Sarah, and we have this small B plot with her with getting accepted to school, not taking high school seriously, so she's struggling to have a college accept her so she can pay them thousands of dollars, which is pretty bad, but it's a Lutheran art school, so I'm like, that's funny. That's like, okay, she got it. But she's arty, she's creative, so we don't see her, as she doesn't actually get to open the letter because they're talking about the party, about how, the block you pulled was supposed to kiss the person to your left, how you were supposed to kiss me. And then we get that inevitable, like I said before, you see the way that car window shot, Nikki's gonna come flying through, and she does with I thought she just smashed her head against the steering wheel, but she had a brick. You said she had a whole plan. So she pulls the brick out, puts it on the steering wheel, and proceeds to smash her face over and over again, leaving a disgusting pile of face and skull chunks. It's a gruesome, hoary shot and effect, and now somebody's dead. We've killed both women characters in the movie at this point. Essentially, Nikki's all but dead, and now we're kind of left with the aftermath of hiding the body. And what does Bear do?
Like he got the woman that didn't want to be with him, that saw him like a brother, and then he said, well, that was easy, so I guess I'll try to get the one that really desperately wanted to be with me, who, she gives you that pick me speech, and she's like, well, I think she's using you, Bear. I think it's really unfair that she's putting you in this position. It's like, girl, you needed more friends, because like anybody would tell you, like, queen. And she's like, now my dad's gonna take me seriously because I'm gonna be a tattoo artist with an art degree. I can make that joke. But speaking of which, I think it's kind of interesting. I noticed a detail about when he looks at the letter rather depressed and is like, oh, I just killed the bright future of two young women. He's reading the letter, and she got accepted into the art school, which is a Christ-centered art school, Lutheran art school in Oregon. It's in Beaverton, Oregon. It's kind of an interesting note because you hear like the mourning dove in the background as he's doing it, and the mourning dove is a Christian symbol for forgiveness and peace specifically. I think that's kind of an interesting note. Again, I don't know if that was intentional. I assume so, because to get a mourning dove and like your sound recording, I think you have to really mean it. So everything's intentional, and if that's the case, I think that it's supposed to. I think the feeling I get is that it's implying that person was going to find peace through her life. She was going to get the break she needed to get the life she wanted, and Bear rather cruelly, he took that away from her. It doesn't have anything to do with Nikki. Nikki is a missile. Nikki is a weapon at this point. She's just flying through. like weapons. Pat just made the weapons arms.
Weapons came out, I think, a year prior. So I don't know. It could just be like kismet timing, but
I know.
I did think that was maybe it's part of folklore, like willow tree could be it could be part of just the wishing willow could be a thing. And it just could be a total coincidence. It's not similar. It's just like a mechanic that is similar. It's not necessarily like the same idea. It's a different idea. One's a wand. One is just kind of like a tchotchke.
I know exactly what you mean. It drives me crazy because nobody talked about it at all. And I was pretty chronically online during this time, looking at all the clips and reading all the comments. And like, I know in Weapons, they're rapping with the hair over the willow branch. I mean, it was also a willow branch. Pat just made a good point, gesturing to me that she did cut his hair. We were joking about her eating it. Yeah, so I remember having just seen Weapons and watching this and thinking to myself, like, that's kind of a weird coincidence, don't you think, guys? And like everybody was like, what? But I know it doesn't bother any of us really, I think, because it is Obsession is a unique piece. And I think I did make a lot of jokes about how it made me think of Play Misty for me, which if you're like really sick in the head and or over the age of 58, you probably have seen it. Ruined an entire generation of men. Ask your dad, ask your uncle. He'll tell you. To answer your question about the willow branch, though, I will say it symbolizes flexibility, healing, enchantment, and mourning. The willow branch is known for lots of things, including ancient Celtic and European folklore, and its connection to magic, lunar energy, psychic abilities, because of the tree's affinity for water. That's kind of interesting. Underworld connections, known for connections with Hecate, Persephone, all kinds of, I think, religious through lines involving traditional witchcraft and such and so forth. So I don't know, maybe that's just a commonality they share. What do you think the shop owner wished for with his one wish?
Maybe a big dick? But I don't know.
That explains his overwhelming confidence. And he's like, you could just kill yourself. Not that Bear's really listening, which is so funny. It's such a funny little detail. I love how all the people who work and own this shop, I don't know why I'm assuming he's the owner. It could have been the lady prior to. Nobody cares. Everybody's so indifferent. I guess like there's no likable characters really. I think Sarah's okay because she's not like doing anything that's, hateful. She's kind of just like, there's like the scene in the music store when like the montage is going on and she's kind of mean mugging. She's like, what is going on here? This is fucked. So I feel like she's like maybe the one innocent character. That'd be my guess.
Nikki's definitely the most innocent character. She's literally the victim of Bear the entire movie.
That's
but I'd say the women, both of them are sympathetic.
No, that's true. I keep thinking her like separately as like the entity meets like chaotic force and less of a person, but I think that's probably intentional in a sense. I think that's supposed to emphasize a point, and it works. It works so well. Nikki becomes such an entity and force of chaos that she's like killed everybody. I think she's trying to kill Ian. There's the brick scene, obviously, and you've got Ian when Bear shows up and is like, what is going on with Nikki? What's going on with Sarah? She's texting me. She keeps telling me to come over to your house. So clearly, Nikki's texting using Sarah's phone and trying to trap Ian. I think the idea is that freaky Nikki's trying to isolate Bear and take away his resources so that he can only care about her. I think that's probably what the intention is. And when Ian later shows up at the house, she fucking headshot, one go. So crazy. I think also like there's this really interesting sound editing, direction, acting, performance choices that happen. Like as he's like banging on the door and Bear's asking her like questions and has just seen Sarah's unclothed dead body sitting in the other room. And now Nikki's wearing her dress and trying to smoke her cigarettes. The entity doesn't know how to smoke. So she's just like puffing and she's like, why won't you love me? And then there's this awesome moment where I think the real Nikki's kind of also cutting through and she's saying stop. I think she's saying stop to Ian. That was a fan theory that I saw kind of going around. I think that makes a lot of sense because you see like her break a little bit after smashing herself in the face with a brick. And again, I think that's intentional because she's trying to emulate everything that he cares about, which was Sarah, who doesn't have a face now. So she's gonna bash herself with a brick too, right? And there's a lot of layers to it. I think it's interesting. I think I heard her say, "I want to eat you up." I think is what I. Yeah, so I think that's like a harken back to the Hansel and Gretel. There's more Exorcist-like themes when she projectile vomits after her head trauma, as you pointed out, onto Bear. And I think that's that moment that Bear has when he's just been vomited on and she's holding a gun to her own head, and he's like, that's it, I'm cooked. There's no way around this, is there? I'm not getting out this time.
So he goes in the bathroom, and we get to see him kind of like battle with am I going to shoot myself in the chest? Am I going to shoot myself in the head? And then he remembers the pills, grandma's pills. He takes them, and then right before he throws up, because we get a moment where he's like accepted that he's just he's committed, he tries to gag them out, and then we hear the one wish willow snap, the one left that we see kind of fall to her feet when Bear goes to the bathroom. And there is kind of a fuck up there, because we hear the theme music of her taking out of the box, but it's already out of the box. I think just because I repeat viewing noticed that, and then once it snaps, we get this nice truck out of the music and Bear's realization that non-realization that now he is as obsessed with her as she is with him. And we get a really funny moment of them covered in blood, like smiling at each other. And then you get a few moments where they're both equally obsessed. And then he starts frothing at the mouth and dies. And right before she blows her brains out, she snaps out of it because the curse is broken. We get kind of this wind sound getting sucked up, like almost like the magic is drawn out of her. And then she looks around and she's left with basically triple homicide, or I guess triple homicide. Who knows what is her fate? Obviously, it's not good. There's nothing she's going to be able to do at this point. She's fucked. And then credits. Great movie. Probably one of the better horror movies of the year.
Yeah, I'm interested to know kind of what you guys think. If you have time or care, tell us what you think. Was it a demonic possession or a force of nature, like Pat said? What do you think about some of these details we touched on, and do you agree? I'd love to know. Leave your comment wherever you hear this episode.
And we're now back. Let us know. Honestly, if we get any feedback, maybe we'll do more. We were just compelled to do this one because we had a lot of thoughts on it. And do you have any parting thoughts for them?
Why, Pat, I do indeed. I want to leave you all, if you were under the age of, like, let's say 27, you're still trying to figure out your life and whatnot and so forth, and this movie may have touched on a few things that you personally identify with. I hope not, but you never know. Is that bad? Because I think, like, complicated, messy dating and obsessive partners and boundaries not being set, I think that happens a lot in your 20s. I mean, I know it did with me. I didn't have anybody pointing a gun at themselves and saying that they were going to shove their eyeballs up their pussy, me personally.
Yeah, she was going to blow her head. The sequence in which she's like, I'm going to blow my head off and shove my eyeballs up. I can't remember what she said exactly. She really commits to, like, this is a cautionary tale. I would say. I think if you've watched this movie, you're young, you're left with kind of like, I could see myself if I was young, I'd be like, oh, that's veering kind of towards Bear territory. I don't know if I want to go that route. I see my decisions kind of clearly laid out in front of me. So I guess that would be more of a subconscious thing. But, cautionary tale, horror comedy.
You're saying a rom-com. I mean, it's basically a rom-com, right? It's first she's not interested in him, then she becomes interested, then he's not interested in her, and then they both become interested in each other, and then he dies. It's a tragedy. It's tragedy, but it is a romantic comedy, and I think there are some identifiable notes in it, but they're the extreme, right? Horror is drama, but with higher stakes. So we're talking about identifiable characters in anybody's life, but to the extreme. Everybody knows Ian, he's an asshole, but this character is especially bad because it's a caricature. And my advice to anybody who's still kind of in the process of figuring out their relationship, or they themselves personally, their relationship with themselves, is what's the worst that can happen? Be direct. You can spend the rest of your life pining for what could have been, or spend the rest of your life with somebody or a group of people that were never right for you in the first place. Just be true to yourself. Be direct. I think that might not necessarily be the message in this movie, but it's what I walk away with for sure. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for taking the time. If you're still inclined to stick around for maybe future episodes, please feel free to give us a follow, subscribe. We're on Instagram and YouTube. We appreciate it. Hey, I know it's been a long time, but I'm not saying we're back. But we're back. But it was nice, kind of dusting off the equipment and getting to a chat. talking about a really, really excellent film. I hope that you enjoyed it. But we'll see you freaks later.